What is up, my fellow Guardians? It is your boy Turk here at SGN Hub, and today, I guess I'm bringing a video today on more so why I've had a little bit of a hard time playing Destiny lately, and why it's felt like a bit of a lackluster experience. And I feel like this was ultimately summed up in some of the most recent changes that only further seem to exacerbate player sentiment and the enjoyment, I guess you could say, of the quote-unquote grind. I will say that Edge of Fate certainly wasn't one of the most disappointing experiences that I've had in Destiny. I was intrigued a bit by the story when it first came out, and, I did play through it, and I enjoyed myself in the lore of the Nine, and the one thing that really stood out to me about the Edge of Fate was I didn't really feel that interconnectivity from the story. I felt like, yes, I was playing a DLC, or I was going to do something new, but it's kind of hard to put my finger on it, but I couldn't quite feel the soul of the DLC. It felt very, very lifeless, nonetheless. And once I got to, I guess you could say, the power grind, or, whatever the power grind would be personified as, aka solo ops Caldera and spamming, one particular exotic mission, I found myself feeling extremely empty, honestly, with this Destiny experience. And I think that's very upsetting because I've always been drawn to Destiny simply for, the gameplay alone. And some people may or may not, agree or disagree with that. But I know there are a lot of people who do share that same sentiment. I think what's really, really missing from the game right now is something that's actually immersive enough to make you want to explore the new armor features and the things that they put into the game to really explore power fantasies. I'm personally not a big fan of having all of the available modifiers for missions. I know that it's nice to have that freedom of choice to do things a particular way you want, but I think when you introduce a rank grading system like A, B, C, D, or whatever that is, and then you have things that are arbitrary or ways that you can modify the mission to make it play the way that you would like it to, kind of takes away from the idea of there even being an actual challenge or the idea of there being a reward. It simply feels like I'm advantageously carving away at the game and, its obstacles to just better achieve a higher number, i.e., Caldera, setting it to B+, and then getting that A rank. I was under the impression initially that setting it to A rank was the most efficient, and then you find out that it's not. I know that sounds small and minute, but not having a curated highest role or highest difficulty available for people to play through, I think, for most activities is kind of strange, or like for the extensive amount of time to unlock it. I think this grind to get to the level that is, I guess you would say, respectable for Grandmaster content or GM content, it was just less appealing, and I couldn't even care less on doing the math more on figuring out the time constraints compared to grinding this season to the last season, just genuinely because of how boring and uninvolved it felt to even play the game as of right now. I get on typically whenever I have that spark to play it, but Edge of Fate, I think, ultimately has not really delivered what I was hoping for in the DLC itself, and I really have to find what that new niche or fun thing that brings me back to the game is, because I've always been somebody who doesn't necessarily enjoy just pursuing the exact same role that everybody else has, or looking for that one role, or looking for that one weapon that everybody's obsessed for. I've always enjoyed playing the game my own particular way. And it seems as if Bungie even almost like intrudes on that individuality or that desire to play the game myself with some of the unnecessary changes, like, the exotic glaive changes that they made where, it takes 6 hits. And it's like some of those niche things that you do in the game that get reworked and change the way that they're there, almost slightly change even the appeal of the game itself. I know we now no longer have Pete Parsons there, and I feel like we're kind of really heading into uncharted water now with Destiny 2. Destiny Rising is set to release soon, and I do believe they were boasting like 10 million pre-downloads. And I don't know if that is going to be something that, is a stake in the heart for Destiny 2, or if it's something that, ultimately brings life to Destiny itself. But with how, I guess you would say, updated the graphics look for Destiny Rising, it seems like some players may even feel enticed to gravitate towards Destiny Rising with how loyal they've been to the Destiny experience. And I wouldn't be surprised if they did get a relatively decent chunk of the player base to go play Destiny Rising either instead of or as well, in conjunction with their Destiny 2. But right now, it seems like the game for me is personally in a lull, so much to the point where I typically have been getting on and I read the TWABs via Astrocross. Shout out to Astrocross, another weekend, another TWAB, of course. And that is like the extent of my Destiny experience. I've been relegated to League of Legends, Marvel Rivals, and Fortnite. And I haven't really felt the desire to play the quote-unquote old reliable. And I think a lot of that is heavily in part due to the way that this season was rolled out. I know it's not because I don't like Destiny anymore, and I think a lot of people aren't cognizant of whether or not they like playing a game or they do. I think that's the middle ground that a lot of players have reached, and that's just due to, I think, maybe like content fatigue or Destiny fatigue. The game's been out for quite some time, and there's been a lot of ups and letdowns, and it seems like the community sentiment does a lot of times fall upon deaf ears. They're talking about Caldera and some of the solo ops being too rewarding, when ultimately most of Edge of Fate simply wasn't rewarding. And the grind itself wasn't very good until Solstice came around. That's whenever you started having the loot bonanza. If I'm not mistaken, I do believe they did get Michael Salvatore. I think Salvatore is going to be back for Renegades, and I really hope Renegades can breathe some life into the new direction that Destiny is going. It just seems as if the game, like I said, has ultimately lost its soul, and the changes that they've made were not very groundbreaking changes. I will say I'm a big fan of the armor system. I like the updated tiers, but it seems so painfully slow to get to it. You question whether or not it's worth that few 5-6% just to get that roll. Something about getting a tier 2 that is the quote-unquote god roll and knowing that it's not going to be useful to you simply because there's that small percentage difference in damage at a grind that is unspeakably far away from you. So if you get a god roll for a mint retrograde, that is what you want. Say you want to get rewind rounds and bait and switch, and it comes at a tier 1. You upgrade it all the way, you get all the you get all the kills with it, and then next thing you know, you're seeing mint retrograde tier 4s drop, and it's not the rolls that you want, but it's tier 4. So in essence, in your brain, you have that mark line for it being better than the one that you have, even though it doesn't have the perk combinations that you're looking for. You'll be missing out on a little bit of damage, and you're almost doing some unnecessary min-maxing, and it kind of doubles the grind in a way. And Bungie, I feel like, is classic for roping in their players to grinds and making something feel like an actual fun loop of, an actual reward gamification process where they're like, okay, you did this, you got this, you did this, you got this. But whenever you stack that on way too many layers, it just becomes cumbersome and ultimately not fun to log into. It feels more like a job grinding this season than it does to actually play the game, test out builds, and go do fun activities. Because I feel as if the portal and some of the other things have really convoluted the game, and as much as it has gotten people to go do things, those things don't necessarily feel like they have life within them. So I'm curious whether or not it has done more good for the game or bad. But whenever you look at the community that you do have left, you wonder if there are newcomers or people that are willing to explore new avenues, or if they're really learning about the game. I think Renegades needs to be a very big turnaround for Destiny 2 in order for them to bring back some legitimacy and actually have people believe in them in this industry. After what happened with Marathon, some of the illustrations that were ultimately plagiarized, a lot of content and bugs that have kind of been very consistent, pervasive all throughout Destiny's lifespan, are really, like I said, beginning to create that Destiny fatigue, I think, on even long-time players. I don't see myself quitting playing Destiny completely anytime soon, but having the willpower and the desire to get on there and try to figure out what is, niche and not quite well known about has been a little bit more difficult lately, nonetheless. And as I say this, I plan on hopping on Destiny and running some missions and hopefully figuring out something new and bringing you guys some new info. But as of right now, I think currently Destiny fatigue may very well be the best way to describe what a lot of players are feeling given the current state of the game. And I'm really hoping that we can make a turnaround for this for Renegades, being as I'm really excited for it. I'm not the biggest Star Wars buff, but I think the universes of Destiny and Star Wars absolutely collide very well in a way that could be something really cool for the game. We know it's not a Star Wars DLC, but it's ultimately a homage to the Star Wars universe, so I doubt we're going to be fighting Jedi and stuff like that, and members of the Sith in the story. But I do look forward to Destiny taking a step off of the beaten path. And I hope that we can, correct this course of what feels like stagnancy. And ultimately, as much as I hate to say it and repeat this, is it feels like a very soulless environment that we are all hopping into and running around and running strikes and solo calderas in at the current time. But with that being said, I appreciate you guys all listening to my rant. And if you have any thoughts to potentially contribute to this, or what you feel like may be contributing to the quote-unquote Destiny fatigue that I've mentioned here, or if you're not feeling it, just feel free to let me know in the comment section. I would love to hear you guys' opinion or what you guys are currently thinking about the state of the game. But with that being said, be on the lookout for more Destiny 2 content. I have no implications of it completely stopping, but I know it has been nonetheless, a bit of a drought. Other than the TWAB being posted by a lot of the larger creators themselves, maybe I need to get a little bit more creative and start discussing those as well. But it has been your boy, Turk, here at SGN Hub. Peace out, my fellow Guardians.